In today's video, we're going to explore the 10 plagues of Egypt, one of the most impressive accounts in the Bible. Did you know that each plague had a purpose and deep meaning? We'll understand the context, curiosities, and how each plague challenged the Egyptian gods and the Pharaoh's authority. So, let's dive into this fascinating story together. Let's begin with the first plague, which turned the Nile River into blood. This river was essential for Egypt, as it irrigated crops and sustained life in the desert. The plague was a direct attack on the god Hapi, the god of the Nile's floods, and also on the belief that the Nile was sacred. Through this, God showed that he had full control over the waters of Egypt. The second plague brought an invasion of frogs. It might sound funny, but frogs were also symbols of fertility for the Egyptians, and they were associated with the goddess Hecate, who had the head of a frog. This plague was a reminder that even nature and the beliefs associated with it were under God's power. The third plague was lice, or dust that turned into insects. The Bible describes how all the dust of the land of Egypt turned into these annoying insects. The plague challenged the Egyptian priests, who valued purity. Insects like these would prevent any sacred rituals, as priests had to remain pure to perform the rites. The fourth plague brought a swarm of flies that invaded homes and covered the land of Egypt. Besides being an inconvenience, these flies likely carried diseases and represented contamination. In this plague, God showed that he could distinguish his people from the Egyptians, as the Hebrews were not affected. The fifth plague was the death of cattle and other animals, a severe blow to the Egyptian economy. The Egyptians worshipped various gods connected to animals, such as Apis, the bull god. God showed that he had power over the health and life of these animals, which were revered by the Egyptians. The sixth plague brought sores and boils upon the Egyptians and their priests. This physical punishment affected the very bodies of the people, which was humiliating, especially for the Egyptian priests who considered themselves superior and pure. The sores also symbolized that God's power exceeded any human power. The seventh plague was a storm of hail and fire, something unusual and devastating in Egypt. This plague struck crops, trees, and even people. This event challenged the Egyptian god Nut, who was seen as the protector of the heavens. God showed that even the sky was under his command and that he could use nature to fulfill his purpose. The eighth plague was an invasion of locusts that devoured the remaining crops. In an agricultural country like Egypt, this was catastrophic. The locusts destroyed the remaining plantations and trees, wiping out the people's sustenance. This plague symbolized God's complete dominion over the production of food. The ninth plague brought 3 days of total darkness, a direct affront to the sun god Are, one of the most important Egyptian deities. The darkness was a sign of God's power over light and darkness. In Egypt, where the sun was worshipped, this plague was a declaration that the God of Israel was more powerful than the sun God himself. And finally, the 10th plague, the death of the Egyptian firstborns. This was the most painful and personal plague of all. While the Hebrews marked their doorposts with the blood of a lamb to be spared, every Egyptian household lost their firstborn. This plague was the final judgment against Pharaoh, who considered himself a god and whose own lineage was struck. These 10 plagues showed that the God of Israel had power over all creation and that there was no God greater than him. Each plague had a specific purpose and reminded the Egyptians that their gods and beliefs were powerless to stop what was happening. This story reminds us that God is above all, demonstrating his love and power in defense of his people. Did you enjoy these curiosities? Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and share for more content on Bible stories.